Okay. The Abravanel Shita. Okay, so first quick review of the other six. Sadigon Ibn Ezra Kareis is same as Misa B'Shemayim. Major problem with that is it's Misa B'Shemayim. Okay. Second Shita is Rashi, which is that it is early death and then either childlessness or death of your kids if they're young. And his main problem with that is what if your kids are old or you don't
or you're sterile.
Or you're sterile, right?
Sterile, you automatically putter from
right.
Kareis.
Yeah. Third Shita was the weirdest one, which is one of the Tosfos Shitos, which is death. Kareis is death at 50, right. At 50. And then Misa B'Shemayim is death at 60. Right. And Davka death at 50, meaning that he asked a question like, oh, if you got Kareis when you're 20, that means you're going to live to 50 guarantee because you got to get Kareis, right? So that's that's weird. Fourth Shita is also Tosfos. That is, that was in there. Fourth Shita is Tosfos, which is you die on day 3 of a terminal illness.
Right.
And I think his main question on that was that could be a chesed in certain cases, right. Instead of a long drawn out illness. Fifth Shita was the Rambam, which is soul cut off from Olam Haba. His problem with that was that there's no degrees, right?
That was the biggest issue, I think.
Yeah, that was the major one.
She had on other people, but it was a big issue on Rambam.
Right. Okay, Ramban's was the complicated one, right? So if your zechuyos are more than your avonos, then you die early in this life, but you get full Olam Haba.
Yeah.
If your avonos are more than your zechuyos, you live out this life, but then you get cut off from Olam Haba. That's like the Rambam's Kareis. And then if there's a chilul Hashem, then there's an extra bad thing. What was it? I think if there's a chilul Hashem.
If you're what's it called? If you're
I did not get that. No, then it's both. Oh, okay, so it's both.
Right? Yeah. That you die early and then you also
okay.
Not
right.
To...
So what was his main problem on that?
So you like the fact
he's going to have the same problem as the Rambam for the one Shita, right?
What do you mean?
Meaning that the notion of there not being subject to degrees within the soul thing, I think.
Yeah, I think he actually did ask I don't know.
Oh, this was the linguistic problem, right? That it says to the ish or in the fashos.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, the Ramban was like, oh, ish is this and nefesh is that. And then he was like, well, nefesh means that.
Yeah. Okay, not the biggest problems. Okay, but now we're at 137. Oh, sorry, page 137, right? So now the bottom paragraph, das shvi'i. Mibneze kulo nearly b'davar hazeh das shvi'i. Oso ra'isi tzadik lefanai b'davar hazeh. You know what that's a reference to?
Righteous.
Yeah, it's Noach.
Oh.
Hashem says about Noach. Oso ra'isi tzadik lefanai b'davar hazeh. So he's giving a pun, saying his Shita is the only tzadik out of all of them.
Oh boy.
Yeah. All right. So he says v'hu shal Kareis bichlal, Kareis in general, b'chol hashloshim v'sheish krisos, all the 36. Kola legufa lenefesh. It's for both. Okay, so that's satisfying his requirement that it be a nefesh, which means both the combo, the hybrid, right?
It doesn't satisfy his degrees thing.
Oh, okay. So there's only one sentence in. We'll give him some time. Im leguf b'olam hazeh. Okay, whether for the body in this world, shikatru yimei hachote, that the days of the chote are cut short. V'yamus kodem ito, and he dies before his time. Shai roy lo k'vitivo. He dies prematurely. All right, so that's still another shear locked and loaded about whether you could premature death, right? All right. The im lenefesh, and if it's for the soul, she'achri hi parda min haguf b'olam hanashamos tisrachik miziv hashchina umikibul hashefa ha'elyon lenefashos hazochos shama mitzor chaim. This is different. Okay, not that your soul gets destroyed, but that after it separates from the body in the world of souls, it is distanced from the radiance of the Shekhinah and from receiving the transcendent overflow to the souls, which merited there from the bundle of life. In other words, whatever the good Shekhinah stuff is, you get less of that. You get distance from that. There's your degrees. Okay, and I'll say, L'kach nikra ha'oneshahu Kareis, that's why it's called Kareis, cut off. Shuha lashon hanofa al ha'anaf hanichras min ha'ilan. Kareis means it's like the branch that's cut off from the tree. Shemimenu yikabel ha'hazana v'hachius. That's the branch gets the nourishment and the life from clinging to the tree, but smichaso and growing from it.
But
So you're cut off from like Shechina.
Yeah, when the branch is cut off, the branch dies.
But you're already dead.
No, what I'm saying is that if he's saying that you're cut off from that which gives you life, right? And in this sense, the nefesh, that which gives you life, let's say would be knowledge, zivashkin, whatever it is, right? Then if you're cut off from that, the same way that a thing's cut off from a tree, then it's gonna just wither and die. Then he would seem to have, well, unless he's not saying his muscle's perfect.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to guess, but we'll see how he plays it out. Okay, Kain hanefesh, so too the nefesh. Tikaras may also tzur hachaim ha'elyon. It's cut off from that the bundle of life, the upper life. V'lo yikabel ziva shechina shehu ha'onev ha'sachar hanafshi, and it does not receive the radiance of the shechina, which is the enjoyment and the spiritual reward. Okay, aval in ze lanefesh hedar gamor b'hefzin muchlad. This is not a complete negation and destruction of the soul. Ki hu etzem ruchani kaim ba'atma. So this is his premise. Okay, so I thought I was joking, but I wasn't. So the soul is a non-physical essence, so it's eternal by nature. So you can't kill the soul. Okay, you could just turn down the faucet. Okay, premise. Bilti nifsad b'tiva, unless it is without destroying its nature. In other words, I think he would admit that it's, well, actually, I don't know if he would admit this. Well, how does the Rambam hold that his soul could get destroyed?
Good question. I'm not sure that I know that. I haven't learned much about Prakim.
Okay, I don't know if it would be in there.
There's no soul, I thought.
He does, but I don't know if he talks about the eternality of the soul there.
Wait a second. I mean, I'd have to assume he said somehow built into the essence of the soul. That like if X then Y.
Yeah. So what is the soul according to the Rambam? Simply.
Oh yes. Intelligence.
Close. It's your knowledge.
Okay.
Right. So if your knowledge, if you have certain fundamental distortions, let's say like you don't hold by God, or you don't hold by God. No, I mean, I don't know all the mechanics, but the easiest way to understand it is with God. Like if you have a corruption in the Yisodos, so then your soul doesn't have existence in Olam Haba. So I don't know if that's what the Abravanel means when he says built in nifsad b'tivo, that if it were like negated from its nature, like if it never got existence, then of course it's not going to exist. But once it exists, then you can't destroy it. Like try to destroy the idea of triangle. Good luck with that. Yeah, right. So like it's an eternal thing by nature.
He's saying that since you know it exists when you're alive, then by negating that existence when you're dead would be negating it when you're alive. Technically, like you have to when you're alive. That's
what I'm saying. He's not saying that, but that's my interpretation of Bilti Nifsad B'Tivo. That like that would be the only way to not have a soul in Olam Haba is if you just never got it.
Right.
But maybe he's not even saying that. Maybe he's just saying. Yeah, but it could be that I don't know exactly what he holds the soul is. I mean, because I do know, spoiler alert, not from later on, but he does hold by resurrection. We all do. He holds by reincarnation. He holds by Gilgal. So so he has a different idea of what the soul is. I mean, that's why this is taking an explicit philosophical stance. He holds it's an etzem ruchani. Rambam does not hold that. It seemingly. What? Yeah. Yeah, so maybe that's a different thing. So I'm not exactly sure what he holds the soul. Let's go on though. Okay, this is the second step that's difficult. Kareis is a punishment and affliction, great pain to the soul. To kababo hapachus vayeser, which is subject to increase and decrease. Okay, you can have more and less. Okay, we're gonna have a brief word from our sponsor in a second. Okay, the achrei kibul haonesh. Tashuv l'kibul ha'idun v'ha'oneg, and then after it gets the punishment, it'll go back to receiving the enjoyment and the pleasure.
Can I guess what his proof is?
Okay.
It's actually funny because we did this chazal with Rabbi Zimmer last year. He gave to Migdal about the 6 months in max 12 months. And you have 6 months in the fiery part, and then 6 months in the ice part. Ooh. And it's like a whole crazy thing. Yeah. We did like a crazy shot on it. It was like
okay. That sounds like an interesting share.
Yeah. So I wonder if he's gonna talk because that's what he's talking about. Like
it is.
And then there's different levels.
Yeah. Im yikaris v'od yachalif v'yonakaso lo techta. Okay, so this is from Eov. if he is cut off, the od yachalif, and then is exchanged again, and it will yonik of yonkaso lo yachtal. It's nourish. Yonik is like to suckle, right? Like from a source of nourishment. Its suckling will not cease. So it means it sounds like it's going to go back and get restored.
That's like a very broad general.
Let's just finish the paragraph. If you're going to quote Chazal saying, like you did, that the ownership of Rishayim and Gehinnom is 12 months, lo amru zeb in hakrisos. They didn't say that about Kareis. Kibehem onsham lenefesh zman yoser aruch mizeh. You get a longer punishment than that. Oh yeah. What was your question?
I feel like this is on my mind right now because I listened to a share and you referenced Eov or talked about. Oh yeah, it was Epictetus share with Carbonish. Hashgacha. Someone brings a proof from Eov.
Like, you have to.
Would you like methodology?
It's hard.
Would you say like, oh well, he's a smart guy, I can trust that, or would you say like, I know Eov is like extremely difficult to understand.
I mean, I personally think that there's two types of proofs you can bring from Eov, right? There's proofs that you bring from Eov's shita on schar va'onesh, in which case you have to know who's quoting it and what their whole way of learning Eov is, you know? But then there's also like ideas in Eov that stand independently of what your shita is. This sounds like an idea that like you need to have a shita on Eov in order to get, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm actually going to hold off on the sponsor. There's a Ron that I want to read you. Ron's not actually the sponsor, but like, Drashos Ron, yeah.
We have it.
Yeah. But let's go on and get his full shita first.
Yeah.
Big shita. I don't want to do the whole thing yet. I think the next two paragraphs, because it looks like after that it's Arbor Rios. There's 4 proofs. Okay, so we'll do the shita first. The bullet point says, "Eina kares hanafshi shave etel achotim hashonim." Kares of the soul is not equal to the different levels of different sinners. Ramas haonesh nikbas lefi ma'azein hazchuyos va'avonos. The level of punishment is established based on the balance of zchuyos and avonos. All right, so let's read this inside. Not all kareses are equal in spiritual punishment. There's going to be a difference in the duration, of the onesh, whether it's great or small, due to the severity of the chet or its lightness. And kares, according to this, is going back to something that sounds like the Ramban. If you have majority of merits and a minority of avonos, according to which God's measure is that you get punished for the minority of avonos in this world, so that you get reward paid for you in olam haba. If one of those minority of avonos is kares, even though you get your ownish in this world, you do not get cleansed from having your soul receive punishment in olam haba, whether a little or a lot, according to the chet. Okay, so in other words, like this: if you have majority of zechuyos and miyut avonos, or let's say you didn't have any kresos, so what's going to happen? You're going to get all your punishment in this world, so that you get only a reward in olam haba. But if you have a kares in there, you're going to get presumably a lot of your punishment here, and then you're going to get some punishment in olam haba, whether a lot or a little, from the kares.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And I guess a big difference. I mean, it's Ramban versus Rambam also is like whether or not, like the mechanism after you die. I mean, the Rambam's just simply if you have more avonos, then you cease to exist. Like that's kares. Like,
yeah. And so this is where we're gonna get to the Ran. Yeah. The Ran is the interesting thing. Okay. Hine im haya v'chein im haya ruba avonos miyut zechuyos. If likewise, if you have majority of avonos and minority of merits, shekvi hamida nosnim lo schar zechuyos b'olam hazeh k'dei lifara mimeno merov avonos b'olam haba. So according to that, your din is you get rewarded for your zechuyos in this world, so that you get punished in olam haba. Yeah.
It seems like these are, this seems to be a question on, again, Rambam and Ramban both. It seems that kares is, I know like I'm not going to really define this, but in a sense like quantitative. So when it says that there are certain like averos in the Torah that like you do X and then you get kares, like How does that
so
work?
so either he's going to have to learn that there are fixed quantities for those Kareisos.
Oh, he said 36 or 63.
Right, but like what that would mean then is that like let's say like Kareis for Avodah Zarah, or Kareis, let's say for Malach on Yom Kippur,
right.
It's probably gonna be worse than Kareis for replicating the Shem and Mishcha. Probably, you know.
So I mean, according to him, he would say that you're more farther away from.
Yeah, you're gonna get more distance from the Shekhinah, or / and he might mean that let's say I eat on Yom Kippur out of taiva, and you eat on Yom Kippur out of like to anger God, then you're going to get a worse Kareis than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not sure. Okay, so then so let's say the majority of avonos guy has Kareis in there. Oh, so then he gets his life cut short in this world. So it's very similar to the Ramban, right? It's just not as clear cut.
And this idea of like gradations, which is what
that's what he's adding to this, because the Ramban had no gradations. Yeah.
Well, he had steps, but like those were steps and not a slider.
Right. Kizo hi chumras hakaris in kol shar hakrisos. That's the severity of Kareis along with the other Kareisos. Shlo yihi nidon kfi klalusam el kfi pratiusam. I see. You're not judged based on the generality. You're judged based on the particular. In other words, I don't know what that means. I was going to say, it sounds like he's saying like with your avonos, majority of avonos, that's just like a lump sum judgment, but each Kareis like gives you a certain more amount of results. Yeah.
Which in a sense, could you? I mean, it seems like what he's saying is that if you die with, let's say, a Kareis, just one, let's say, in a sense, your soul, right, is not being actualized, right? Like kind of like meaning.
Sounds like you're talking about Rambam terms.
No. It's being like less. Like it's being less soul-like.
No. Well,
that's
no.
What it sounds like.
I don't know about that.
Because it can't be farther away. Like you're. Oh, I can't hear you, God. Like I'm too far away.
No, I'm not sure about that. Meaning, well, not distance. No, but others. See, Rambam really holds that the soul is actualized by knowledge and unactualized by lack of knowledge or by distorted knowledge. I don't know if that's how he's taking it. Like he's saying that the soul is like an etzem ruchani. It's a certain essence, and stuff can happen to it. It could get enjoyment or get punishment based on what it deserves. I don't know if there's any change in the soul. It sounds like it's changing what happens to it. And I'm saying this not necessarily based on the Abravanel. I'm saying this based on the way that the Sefer HaIkarim has the difference between those who hold by reincarnation and those who don't. He says he holds it's machlokes between the philosophers and the Torah, and he says that like certain Rishonim were drawn after the philosophers, but he holds that we paskin that the philosophers were wrong.
Wait, the philosophers say no reincarnation or yes reincarnation?
No reincarnation. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. This is his machlokas. I'll say it in a nutshell here. You ever heard that Gemara that is it better to have been created or not to have been created? Yeah, it's based on Beis Hillel and says they debated about it for 2.5 years, and then they took a tally, and then the conclusion was better to have not been created.
Well, that's if you do something. I thought wasn't it based on based on this set of circumstances, it would have been better never been created.
No, but what it does say, unless you're thinking of a different Gemara than I am, but what it does say is now that you've been created, so what are you supposed to do? And it says Yifashish b'masav or Yimashim b'masav. Yeah. So he learns that machlokas to be like, how can you say it's better to have not been created? So he says like this, that the machlokas is whether the soul is koach hiulani or an etzem ruchani. Okay, is it a hylic potential or is it a spiritual essence? Okay, so the philosophers and the Rambam hold that it is a hylic potential, which means that you have a certain capacity to have knowledge, and the more you know, the more you're actualizing your soul. So according to that, it's of course better to have been created, because if you were not created, there's no way to gain knowledge. Okay, but according to the other Shita, your soul is this pure essence, and in the Olam Hanashamos, then it was totally untouched by anything bad. But then once you are put into a material body and you can do hate, so then it can get tainted and ruined. So it's better to have not been created.
So it goes into the body. So it's in the body.
Yeah, it's going to go into the body, right? So then that's how he learns the machlokas. And then he says it's possible that on the basis of that, then those who hold by reincarnation, he doesn't say definitively that reincarnation is true. He's saying those who hold by reincarnation base it off the fact that the soul is a spiritual essence, and therefore the way that Rabbi Maruf explained it when he was giving a shir on the Abravanel Shita, he says it's like if you have like a bag, you could like put a marble in the bag and then take it out and put it in another bag, put it in another bag, you know. So the soul can be in different like vessels. According to the Rambam, the way this is my analogy, okay. Let's say you have a piece of sheet music, okay, and you perform it. So you are actualizing the potential for music on that page, but you can only do that once. If you do it again, it's a different performance. You know, you can't like replicate a performance. It's a different performance. I don't know if that's the best analogy.
I mean,
it's the same sheet, but
is the sheet not analogous to the soul?
The sheet is analogous. No, so the soul would be the performance in my analogy.
Oh, okay, so what the sheet is?
The sheet is the potential, is the highlight. Well, okay, the sheet is maybe it's not a good analogy. The sheet is, let me see how to put it.
The sheet's like the lifespan of the person, maybe?
Yeah. In other words, like once
music would be the knowledge.
Yeah, like once you've actualized it, you can only actualize something once. You can't like the proof he brings is kind of a silly proof. I mean, it's not a silly proof, it's a good proof, but it makes the other shita seem silly. That like he's saying, you're telling me that like if a soul is actualized potential for knowledge, how could it go into another body? Do you see babies who know things, like who have like all the knowledge that they had from their life? Of course not, you know. Right.
The malach flicks them in the womb.
Yeah, well, I think he's probably going to learn that in a different way also, you know. Because he's going to have to explain why, according to the other shita, that's a spiritual essence. Like, you know, you don't have. Actually, I don't know if he has to explain that. I'm not sure. But anyway, this is why I'm questioning whether he holds what he holds about this idea of a soul as a spiritual essence. Like, could it receive diminution, or is it just like it gets less pleasure or more pain or greater pleasure and less pain?
I guess I'm just trying to save it. Like in my mind, I just don't understand how. I mean, maybe I just don't understand his outlook on the Ziv Ashkina though. Yeah, because like again, it can't be a distance thing. It's not like it's not physical distance, right? Yeah. So what does it mean that
you're going to love this Drashos Iran?
You're farther away.
Yeah. Well, bear in mind, by the way, the Rambam also uses that analogy.
Correct.
Right.
But that one makes sense to me because that's to do purely on your knowledge.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
this sounds like you could have the same knowledge, but then depending on whether you did Averos, it's going to affect it. Yeah, I agree. It's much more complicated. I also have my own comment on this after we do the run. All right, let's finish this though. Hine.
I think we were at Ubazeh.
Ubazeh lefi dati, and according with this, according to my opinion, Ma'ado ragli chachmas harav hanachmani. Oh, like on the footsteps of the Nachmanidean Rav. Shelo hivdil ben hakaris l'shar haveros beinin hamida hazos hanis keres, who does not differentiate between karis and other averos with this mida. So no, that's another knock he has on the Ramban, that the Ramban really seems to tally up the other averos with karis.
Right, and
or he holds that the tally does not factor in the kares, right? He holds that you have the tally, and then like the counter looks to see whether you have a kares or not, and then that'll determine whether you get your life cut short or your old haba cut short.
Right. According to Abravanel in this paragraph, if someone has more zechuyos than onshin, but then
avonos,
yeah, but then they have like a kares. Like
so you go to Olam Haba,
but first you gotta wash away the avonos, or does not hold that.
Well, it sounds like your kares gives you a certain onesh. I don't know what happens with the avonos. Oh no, the avonos you get punished for in Olam Hazeh.
And then you die, and now you have.
And then the kares is what lets you, what gives you punishment in Olam Haba.
And that would be being distance.
Yeah. It sounds like you're saying that for the non-kares avonos, then you get all the punishment in Olam Hazeh if you have more zechuyos, and you get your punishment in Olam Haba if you have more avonos. Yeah. Okay, let's do one more paragraph, and then I'll show you this Ron. Hine in Cain, kol kares ben shiyachasu hakasav liish hachote or lenefesh lios sibasa. So therefore, every kares, whether the pasuk ascribes it to the man who sins or to the soul, which is the cause of it, which is the cause of the sinning, like he said last time. Hine geter hakares v'rishumo. Behold, the definition of kares and its impression. Hu hefsek v'kitzur hachaim ba'olam hazeh, v'hefsek ha'oneg hanafshi l'olam haba. It's a shortening of life in this world and a shortening of spiritual pleasure in olam haba. U'le'inyan zeh amru chachamim zichron livracha. And in regards to this, the chachamim said, "Shahaya hakares lachamishim shana." Oh, I forgot about that. So that the kares is at 50 years. Okay, in other words, if your kares does result in you getting your life cut short, then it's going to be at 50 years. Omnam ma shenemar b'magadef yikares nefesh, but by the magadef, when it says that soul shall be certainly cut off and uses double lashon, shedarshu chachmeinu zichron livracha hikares b'olam hazeh tikares b'olam haba eno onesh miuchad l'magadef k'mo shechashav Rava Nachmani. That's not. Well, that was what the Ramban held, right? It's that just that one Megadef and Avodah Zarah, right? That's where you get the cutoff in both worlds. Yeah. So Abravanel says it's not like that you get cut off just for Megadef. About who bir inyan kol kares v'gedro. It's for all Kareis. Okay.
Because he doesn't hold with the idea that a soul can ever be cut off.
Right. Your soul is eternal.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess he was trying to bring issues, or he's bringing issues against the other pshatim within their framework, right? So he's not going to say like, "Wow, he's wrong because he holds that the soul
correct.
is not necessarily."
Yeah. That's a good point, right? Yeah. It's a honest evaluation. Okay, so pause here and let's do this Ran. Okay, so this Ran is in the 10th drasha, and he's talking about punishment. Okay, and he lays out this premise, which I'm just going to summarize this first part, that punishments in Olam Hazeh are for the sake of getting you to do tshuva, or for the sake of a deterrent for other people. Okay. But then he says, Aval onshe ha'olam haba, but the punishments in Olam haba, it's impossible that those punishments are to get you to do tshuva or to deter other people. Because the soul in Olam haba cannot get any straightening out. Okay, right. So this is like the Rambam holds. There's no change of the soul in Olam haba. Okay. However it is when it leaves the body, it's going to remain that way forever. And that's side point. That's my understanding of treatise mesim. Treatise mesim is an opportunity for the soul to go back into the body to get additional perfection, which you can't get in Olam haba.
Did the Rambam not say that straight up?
He might have.
He says that it's counterintuitive because it's seemingly the greatest reward you can get is to come back for something. Right. Yeah. It's like, what? You're dragging me away from the Shekhinah? Yeah. But that's his thing. And then they come in and rebuild society and they have another chance to get closer. Right.
Exactly. Okay. You can't say that in Olam haba, getting punished in Olam haba straightens out other people. Because that punishment is hidden from Olam hazeh, right? So we're not seeing them getting punished. And it's not seen by them at all. So he already said also that God doesn't get anything out of punishing you, and there's no intrinsic idea of punishment. This is not like Christian hellfire where like you deserve to get punishment, so you're just getting punishment for its own sake. Okay, so he doesn't like any of those ideas, but now he's kind of backed himself into a corner. How can you have punishments in Olam haba? Now, the Rambam has an easy time. There's no such thing as a punishment in Olam haba, right? Okay, but what he says, Nitztarech lomar kia onchim ha'hem inyan TV. By the way, this is the best description I've seen of what Gehenna could be. Okay, and the piece de resistance is at the end. Okay, all right. This is the Ran, yeah. So he says, "Nisarach lomar ki ha'onshim ha'hem inyan tivi." So you must say that these punishments of the soul in Olam haba are natural. Okay, masigim lenefesh, and they occur to the soul mitzat atzmusa intrinsically. Kasher hirbasa ashma b'olam hazeh. When they increase guilt in this world. Ki kasher yefshar shiachris ish etzev echad me'atzava v'lo yichav.
Keen cut off his finger.
Well, that's what I thought, but etzba is finger, right? Etzev. Yeah, it sounds like finger, right? Etzbav, right?
His fingers,
yeah, because etzav means sadness, but I assume this means like a finger, right? So just as it's impossible to cut off a guy's finger without him being in pain, it would be impossible for a person to rebel against God and die in rebellion and not have onish to the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it is an interesting thing. He's saying if you cut off someone's finger, that's just the way the physical body works, that it gets pain if you harm it. Right. So when you sin against God, there must be some sort of intrinsic pain that the soul gets as a natural result, not in order to accomplish something.
Interesting.
Okay, but then he goes on.
Shot that I thought of when I learned the Rambam's idea. I wonder. Hopefully.
Sorry, say again.
I had like a big question on the Rambam and then I kind of resolved it, I think.
Yeah.
But now it sounds
okay.
Like what he said.
Let's see.
Sure.
This is what it seems to me to be the eternal punishments of Olam Haba. But the temporal punishments that Chazal mentioned, for example, that you go to Gehenna and you like, I forgot what Mitzvah means. Like you get purified and then you go up, or you go down to Gehenna and are judged there for 12 months. Near she's kapsu shnei devarim. So that seems like it includes two things. Ha'echad she spoiler. Ha'echad she davar TV lenefesh al derech shechasavti. Either you could say that it's a natural thing, like we said, that the soul will experience pain for a certain time. And I'll say, for example, when you cut off your finger, the pain doesn't last for all of your life. Like there's a certain amount of time. And then like it heals or like you stop feeling.
Well, you'd have to say that you still are going to be forced with the consequences of not having a finger.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But the feeling of pain.
Sure, but then you still have a lack.
Yeah, you still have a lack.
So
correct,
there's still going to be some sort of lack.
Perhaps, I don't know how far you're saying in the analogy. You could say instead of cutting off a finger, you could say like getting hit.
Right, and how does that answer the question then? Meaning, how could it possibly happen? It's you can't change. Oh, well, it's built into it that it can.
No. So he's not saying it changes. He's saying it's a pain that you get, right? So just review again.
From not pain to pain sounds like a change.
No, but it's not a perfecting of the soul. The term used is heshara, is a correction of the soul. You're not being corrected in Olam Haba, because however your soul is, that is how it is. But what's happening is like it is a let's see if I can get another analogy that's not cutting off fingers.
Fire? I mean, it's kind of like.
Okay, I'll give you a bad analogy. What?
Yeah.
I'll give you an analogy. Like, okay, this is a bad analogy. Okay, when you catch yourself that you realize that like you believed a contradiction, like you just didn't notice it, like you were like believing something contradictory, so you reject it. Okay, right? You're like, So what's going on there? So the mind is built to reject contradiction. Okay, it's just you didn't notice it. So that pain that the mind experiences when it senses a contradiction is like just a natural reflex of the mind, so to speak. It's just how the mind works, that it doesn't tolerate contradiction. Okay, and if you try to believe that black is white, it's going to hurt. Okay, or that you can make a square circle, it's going to hurt. Yeah, right. Yeah. So in other words, so it's analogous to that. It's like the soul is doing something that's not natural to it, so it experiences pain, but it's not a pain that changes it for the better, and it's not a pain that God gets anything out of. It's not a pain that corrects other people. It's just pain, right?
Sounds terrible.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's I think there's a chazal. It's Olam Haba and it's like the same. It's like the same thing, or like I know I've heard something about it before.
Oh yeah.
Some people have told of that. That like it's to say it depends on like I guess your level of perfection.
Uh-huh.
Like you view it as like X or Y.
Yeah.
Like there was like a thing that they used to say like in the yeshiva. I don't know if this was the chazal, but like that like.
I know what you're gonna say.
What?
Like learning in the basement or whatever. Yeah. Like people love it. It's the best thing. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. I've heard people say that. I've never seen that inside anywhere. So
but that kind of almost
could be. Yeah. Okay. Vashini, and the second thing that would be an explanation for these chazals about you go through certain temporal punishments in Olam Haba. Also, atzara yavi hanefesh l'tachlis tov shetizakech sham. This is harder. That it brings the soul to a good end, that it is purified there in order to be able to derive radiance from the ziv hashchina. Okay, now that sounds like a perfection, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but here is now my favorite line. Aval hameruk v'hazikuch sham ich yihye, but the that cleansing and purification there, how it works, hu davar nelam mimenu gam me'inenu. It's something that is entirely hidden from us and from our eyes. V'im niftach pinu b'mesh ulai tavi elav hasvara. And if we were to open our mouths to say something based on logic, umash nota lo medivre chazal, or based on what chazal say, nihye kachomim, we would be like dreamers. Right, that's like a hainu kachomim, like in Shir Malas, right? Okay, v'lachein, and therefore yoser tov lishok min. It's better to just shut up about it. Ela shekesher ha'inin havyani l'mash dubarbo. But the connections of the matter brought me to say this. So what he's basically saying is like this. He's saying, look, I know what it's not. Okay, I know what punishment olam haba is not. It is not to perfect you. It is not to perfect other people. It's not intrinsic in terms of like you deserve punishment, and God's not getting anything out of it. It must be some sort of natural result that the soul undergoes when it sins. And as for the temporal punishments, either it is of that nature, it's a natural thing, or there's some sort of like readying that it needs to have in order to get radiance from the Shekhinah. But if you try to logic it out and figure out based on philosophy, or if you try to get it from Chazal, you're just going to be fantasizing, and therefore better to just say like, I have no idea what it means. Okay, so this is an interesting thing because this is like two drachim in how to take Olam Haba stuff. Okay, the Rambam took the derech of figuring out all the Olam Haba stuff essentially based on metaphysics and philosophy. Mm-hmm. And what does the Rambam do with all the chazals about Gehenom? He either is going to say it's some metaphor for something else, like we saw in the boiling in feces. Was that in this year?
No.
Oh, so the boiling in feces, that's, you know, Chazal says that they say that for certain things, it's like you go to Gehenna and you boil in feces. And the Rambam says, what does that refer to? What was the context?
Oh, is it, it's, what's it called? It's, Shriva.
No.
No?
No, because it's Olam Haba.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say Shriva because I think there's other Shriva for a chenek that like they put you up to your waist in dung, and then they would do the thing to make it.
It's both actually.
Oh yeah, so
yeah, I think it's both. Yeah.
Boiling feces.
But it's not boiling feces.
Well, I mean, yeah, you kinda. Your innards like burn, and then this thing.
Not from the feces.
No.
Oh, you mean you're boiled inside? Oh, no. Yeah. That's not what he says. Yeah. So no. He says boiling streifa, which we have. Not boiling streifa. Boiling feces, which we have a similar phrase in our lexicon. He says
that's reflux.
No. So he says it's it's stupidity, and there's no greater boiling feces than stupidity. Okay. So he says that it's that whole chazal is just a mashal for a certain distortion that the person has in olam hazeh. Has nothing to do with the soul, except in the fact that if you're stupid, then your soul gets affected in olam haba. So my point though is that with the Rambam's derech is he says, look, based on my understanding of the soul, it cannot be that there's a punishment in olam haba, right? It's either kareis or bust, it's either olam haba or bust, right? So what he does then, and then all of chazal, he's like, okay, fine. They either had a different idea or it's a metaphor for something else. But then there's another derech, which is like the Ramban, which is that no, chazal have a Masorah on this. That has to be the data we operate from. We're not operating from the data of like Aristotle's metaphysics and like figuring that out. And then there's someone like the Ran who's basically saying, look, I mean, from everything we've read, I don't know what the Ran sheet is in general. From everything we've read, it seems like he's saying, I side with the Rambam's view of the soul, but I can't ignore these chazal. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to try to explain the chazal in every way that I can to be consistent with the Rambam. But at the end of the day, they are saying that your soul goes to Gehenna and like gets punished there and then is purified. I have no idea how that works. Yeah.
So I guess I'll ask my question. Question that I have on the Rambam's whole thing.
Why not?
And then see if the
I'll see Slahachi. Yeah.
Could possibly be helping answer this. So my question is that means that if somebody has let's say knowledge of a chair, and someone else has knowledge of a chair.
Yeah.
Right. Then they get the chair idea from the Zivashkina, right? Then they're getting the same reward, right?
Sure. I don't know. I don't know how knowledge works.
Right. So that was kind of part
of
the issue, right? Is that, does that mean like somebody with, so then that kind of my answer to that was like there's quantitative and qualitative knowledge. So like you can have this quantitative knowledge of like I read the dictionary, so like I know words and like I like know descriptions of things. But then there's like you understand like the inner workings of the chair, and then you get like you get the best qualitative knowledge of both the quantity and the quality of your knowledge from here. And then I mean it's like kind of works-ish. But it seems like what the Ron is saying is, and this is something that like I was also kind of inclined to think about, which kind of, I don't know, it's kind of speaking to me a little bit, is this idea that your soul somehow recognizes that its knowledge that it's having is like inferior to, let's say, Moshe's, right? Moshe Rabbeinu's, which is like part of my whole thing. Like, let's say I knew a chair to the perfect degree. Let's just say, right, whatever that means. That means that like my schar for like the chair would be the same as like Moshe's. Like how does that work? Like, what does that mean? So he seems to be saying that, I mean, I guess the question would apply to him also, but he's from what I got from the Quran, your soul somehow recognizes that the ziv that is getting, or like the understanding it's getting based on its knowledge, is like a deficient like ziv.
He didn't say that. It's possible that that's true. He didn't say that your soul recognizes that it's getting a deficient knowledge.
Well, he said that
just that your soul is distanced.
The Ron?
Oh no, I think the sorry.
No, I'm saying the Ron.
Ron also didn't say that.
He said, okay, he said something that made me think that. What was it? What did he say?
I don't know.
The Onche Olmava. Yeah, it was okay. It was that. Right. It's from the Tava of the Nefesh.
Mm-hmm.
That line after the Indian TV. Yeah, that. And then,
that it gets intrinsically kasher here when there's excessive guilt in this world. Just like it's impossible to cut off a guy's finger without him feeling pain. It's impossible for a person to rebel against God and die in his rebellion without getting that punishment. This is what it seems to be about the eternal punishments in Olam Haba. Keep going.
I think it might have been earlier. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
So something made me think of this, that he was saying that like built into the soul is its ability to recognize the deficiency of its knowledge.
I don't think he says that.
Okay.
Yeah. You can check it in the thing later on if you want. Yeah, and maybe he brings on footnotes and stuff. Yeah. So let's go back to the Abravanel. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I know why I brought this in. Okay. So that is the type of thing that I have a difficulty with. So let me comment on what you're saying first of all. Okay. With every additional year that goes by, I understand less and less about the soul in Olam Haba, and I have basically gotten to the point where I feel like I'm never going to understand it. Who knows? But like so much, again, the problem is like so much of what they write about knowledge in Olam Haba is based on Aristotelian ideas about like your active intellect clinging to stuff, and like knowledge of chair and forms and like, and I just don't know how knowledge works. Yeah. So I don't know. So the thing is like, I kind of find myself in a similar position to the Ran, where I'm like, okay, like whatever it is, like there's a Masorah and like there's metaphysics and I don't know which one's which. And so whatever, Yeah. But given that, I'm drawn to the Rambam's view of the soul simply because it is the most sensible to me. I feel like in order to believe, let's say the Ramban's view or the Abravanel's view, you have to posit so many things that we don't understand and then believe in them.
Right.
And whereas like according to the Rambam, okay, I get it. The soul is the part of you that knows, and it's somehow the knowledge that you get is eternal, and that's what goes on to Olam Haba. But to say that there's like distances to the Ziv HaShechina and that it can feel pain and that there's a purification process and time, 12 months, like it's just, and I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's almost like, and I'm not saying that I'm making the decision based on this. It's almost like an Occam's razor type thing, where like the mind is naturally attracted to the model that posits the least. So that's kind of why I gravitate towards the Rambam's view. Not, of course, there are things in reality that are more complicated than the simple models, right. but yeah, that's why I have a difficulty with this kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember the original question that I first asked from Rabbi Ginsburg after learning the Rambam's Akdama to Parashas Shelach, which was, so how does random person's Olam Haba differ from Moshe's? And like, because it seems like according to the Rambam, it seems that somebody who acknowledges and believes in the 13 Yikarim, or knows them, what seems maybe belief, like they're going to Olam Haba, whatever that means, right? They're Zilcha to it, and obviously Moshe Rabbeinu, I hope he's Zilcha to it, because if not, then no one is.
Yeah.
So like, there has to be some sort of difference, because you can't say that.
I mean, the Rambam explicitly raises that question in the Morning Buchan, like says, if you can't know anything about God, then what's the difference between the knowledge of a random person and the knowledge of Moshe Rabbeinu? So. Ayin Sham, yeah. Okay, all right. So let's look at these proofs that the Abravanel has. Maybe that'll clarify the idea. I'm going to give you trustworthy witnesses. Kimatina b'Mishnah b'Reish Krisos. We find in the Mishnah at the beginning of Krisos, mehamila umechametz b'Pesach v'amachal kachim umearayos v'vodas kochavim over vodas kochavim umazalos v'amagadif b'chlalam. Because we see in this list in Krisos that it lists all these things and it doesn't make any distinctions between the levels of Kareis. So now he's saying that they are equal? I thought he was bothered by that.
He was very bothered by that, which is why I looked up as soon as you read that. The Hibdol.
Okay, let's.
It seems to be like maybe he's saying that there's no difference in all Krisos in that.
I just don't understand this. I thought that was his whole problem.
Like the nature of all the Krisos are like the same, but the actual thing isn't. I mean, you can't be saying that.
Yeah, right. Can't say, yeah, right.
So you can say like the nature of each Kareis is the same in that like it's some sort of furtherance.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's read on. See. So in the second Mishnah, it mentions there, here are things that you're chayav for Zadon Kareis and on Shogeg Chatas. And if you don't know that you did it, then it's Asham Tali. So it's like Malach on Shabbos without witnesses, right? Is Chayav Kareis Bezadon and Korban Bishkaga. Yeah. U'Kamoshe Bishkaga u'Below Hoda in Hefresh being Kareis. And just as with Shogeg and without knowledge, there's no difference between these various Isuri Kareis. Kacha Bezadon ein Roy Lomar Shiyeh Hefresh being Kareis the Inyan Onesh. Okay, he's really emphatic on this point, which I thought was the opposite of what he wants.
Yeah.
But ha'id hashlishi mehamagadif b'sipure atzmo. What is it? Footnote 8 saying? Sipur, yeah. Okay. In the story itself, lo amar hakasav ela v'nikrasa hanefesh ahid. Just as the nefesh will be cut off, kaloshan atmo shamar be'ochel dam uvarayas u'v'chametz b'pesach. Same lashon as over there. V'hu ha'mochiach she'inyan hakaras b'kulam shabeh.
Is he saying these specific ones that are in Krisos are all Shabbat?
Yeah, but those are all the ones.
But there's 36 of them, or 63 of them.
Yeah, there's 36.
36 of them.
V'chein amru b'mishnah shezadon kol Krisos hu hakaras bilvad. Amna mash amar od hakasav ki davar Hashem bazav es mitzvaso hefar ki kares tikares hanefesh hi avonaba ino ela nesinas tam lamash amar v'nichos hanefesh hi klomer v'roi hu shi tikares nafsho b'shnei olamos. The fish diber Hashem bazeh ves mitzvaso hefar. Shadavar Hashem bazav ves mitzvaso hefar. V'lachin roi shi anish gufo kfi masav v'nafsho kfi ro emunasav zehu kares tikares. V'darashtem is the Quran of the Bracha. He kares b'olam hazeh tikares l'olam vashu pirish hakares shezakar altzayim yukad b'kares magadif Okay, here's what we're going to bank on. If we get lucky, the Abravanel will sometimes summarize the sheet at the end. Because we're going to bank on that. The Ha'eda Revi who b'mash because of the Tosefta ki dvar shem bazah ze haporik ol umefer bris basar v'hamagala pan b'tor shal halacha. So in there's a Tosefta that says that the phrase he disparaged the word of Hashem. That is if you cast off the yoke of heaven, or reverse your bris milah, or like intentionally don't get a bris milah, or explain Torah not halacha. Okay, well, there's a machlok is what that means. So if you reverse your bris, that's the kares that's mentioned by bris milah. It says explicitly brisi hefar. So then how could be in hikares be olam hazeh and olam haba? I mean, he's saying all the priests are the same. Amitas dati shekola krisos haim ba'olam hazeh uba olam haba. Oh, I know what he means. Okay, here's what he means. Not that they're all of the same severity. He's saying that in contrast to the Ramban, who holds that some krisos cut you off in only in this world, and some krisos cut you off only in olam haba, and some of them in both. He's saying all krisos affect you in olam haba with the spiritual distance thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But each one could do it a different amount.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So he's saying there's no difference there's no categories of kares. There's only quantities of kares. That's how I would put it.
Yeah.
Ramban has, okay, that makes sense now. Okay, I wasn't so bothered by that, but whatever. Okay, we were going to look at unkelos. That's what you mentioned, right? So you can have a doubt about this because unkelos translates in every place. That's not a full unkelos, right? Right? He goes out from that person will go out from his people. Yeah. By the way, side point. Whenever I'm teaching high school and I ask people what they think kares is, so either they quote Rashi or they say it means that you're cut off from the people. And I say, what does that mean? And they say like you like are not considered part of the Jewish people. And
I've heard. I think I grew up with a similar notion.
Oh yeah, so it's I guess people get it from the lashon and the pasuk because no one holds that, right? Like no one holds that in terms of like an interpretation of what kares is. Maybe it's a description,
Right. I mean, unless you say what Pesach and I posited. Or you said we're Pesach positive about Unglos's idea that you're being eliminated from your cast from I forget exactly what Ishtatsi is that there's the Mishnah and Avos which Kol Yisrael so when you become not right for that Chelek and Haba, you go out from the
so what that fits in with is the description of the deaths of tzaddikim is called. It says Asaf El Amav. He was gathered into his people, and that's referring to souls. Blame shot, right? Okay, so he says. So what about unkelos? That sounds like a bodily phenomenon, right? Sha'al kain tirgmu insha, right? And asha. V'gam kain b'magadev tirgum hikaras tikaras nefesh hi abanaba ish tatza ish tatzi inasha hu chova be. Right. Who's Armo? That's very strange. If yechashiv al hashalim unkelos, how can this perfected unkelos think shekibel miRabbi Eliezer Hagad miRabbi Yeshua, who received the Masorah from these two great chachamim, val pm asa targuma, and he made his translation according to their pirush. Kamoshai Etzlam Halach Lamosh Sinai, like it was Halach Lamosh Sinai. She Sakel Amitas Akaris Vinyana. How could he be ignorant of Kares? Well, that's radical. Some people think that he translated it this way for the Hamon because they don't sense the reality of the soul. Okay, I've never heard anyone say that about unkelos before, that he's just translating this way for the Hamon. I mean, if anything, he's doing the opposite. He's decoding it for the Hamon. Uma Yomru Lama Shetirgim Besof Seder Achremos. What are they going to do with at the end of Achremos? This is by, I guess, Arayos. So you can't say that he's just trying to take you out of the nefesh because it says nefesh there. and he's inconsistent. O tashuv tira be'osa parsha shalmala bechutz. Also by bringing korbanos outside of mikdash, shetirgam al ish gever gever. V'chein b'chol Torah shetirgam v'nichras al ish v'ishtetze enasha v'lama l'tirgam v'ishtetze gavra. Okay, fine. So what is he going to explain from Onglos? Aval anira li bezeh kulo hu she'unklos tirgam shaya hakaris leguf ulenefesh kamosh biarti. So of course Onglos ends up holding like him. Right? It's for the body and the soul. L'kach tirgam bo tamid enasha shehaya hakaris ha'enushus. Shu kola leguf lenefesh. That's why he puts it in terms of inish, which is the body and the soul. Ki ein ha'enushus ela chibur ha'nefesh ha'maskelas imaguf ha'enushi. Enushus, humanity, means the joining of the soul and the rational soul and the body. Okay, fine. That's fair. That's why you can't think that he means that Kareis is for the soul alone, lo leguf, and not for the body. Lo tirgum nafshasa. That's why he does not translate it as nafshasa, because that would imply that it's like the Rambam, that it's just for the soul. And in order to exclude the Sajigon and Ibn Ezra, to think, so you don't think that it's just for the body. Lo tirgum bo gavra. He didn't say gavra. Lo tirgum enasha. Shu kola leguf lenefesh. So he's using the term that means both. Okay, great. Amnam sof achremos. Now, what about the exception? Tirgum nechsu hanafashos. That's explaining the pasuk based on the context. Sh'amar, because it says there, so that the earth will not vomit you, the land will not vomit you out like it vomited out the nation who was before you. Shepirusho, Kamoshi Biarti Sham, he explained, as I explained there, don't think, B'nai Israel, that if you do the abominations like the non-Jews, that the land will vomit you out like it did with the nation, and that you're only going to die on Olam Hazeh. It's not like that. In addition to the physical punishment that you'll get like they did, you're going to also get a spiritual punishment. That's why it says the souls. Since the pasuk is coming to tell them the additional spiritual punishment that they get because of the religion, basically the chiddush that Bnei Israel needed to hear was that it's going to cut off their souls. They already knew that their body is going to be affected because that's what happened to the nations before. They all got killed.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. One last line. I explained the subject according to its truth. Vani, no one ever accused the Abravanel of not being bold. Vani hirchati bo hadibur yoser misefer b'sefer tzedek olamim mem beis perik beis asher ani oseh. Perik vav. He says, I think this is sadness coming out. I expanded on this in the book Tzedek Olamim, in that reference that I make. So I think he never got around to making it, or we don't have it. Let's just check. Where do you go when you want to see if the Abravanel wrote a book? Not on Sfaria or Al Torah. You go to the place with all the Hebrew books. Yeah. Is that right? Yep. Hebrewbooks.org. Yep. And you go Abravanel, because they have all the obscure books. And what was it called? Surah. What do you call it?
Tzedek
Olamim. Tzedek. None on page 1. None on page 2. None on page 3. And none on page 4. Yeah, now this is not a definitive proof that we don't have it, but Tzedek Olamim, Abravanel. Sefer Tzedek Olamim Abravanel. Okay, I'll have to see if it exists. Yeah. I think I saw somewhere that it doesn't exist, or we don't have it. Yeah. Okay, so that's the survey. Now, this is 7 shitos that Abravanel collected. Who knows if there are more that came up after him, right? But seemingly you would think that these are the only ones in the Rishonim and the Gonim, because Abravanel is gonna collect them for us, right?
Rabag didn't have one.
Rabag is probably like the Rambam.
Really?
Yeah, knowing the Rabag, because he holds that the soul. His view of the soul. In some ways, it's more Machmir than the Rambam.
He's a very radical view on free will, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but I don't think that affects the soul. Yeah,
Well, so yeah, based on that, I mean, that's like one of the only things I've learned about the Ramban's metaphysics.
yeah.
And like based on that, I was like, wow, it's probably a crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I could look up the Rabak Shita, but my guess is it's going to be the Rambam. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so this is interesting. Again, in terms of like, so here's the thing. This is like leaving off with this question here, okay, which is like, isn't it weird that there's so much machlokas on such a fundamental,
But it's not fundamental to know how it works. Oh, you said Kareis or
Kareis.
Like so many things like Kareis.
Yeah, right. So it's like, we know what all the other punishments are, it's just weird. So my question is more of a subjective question. Like, what are we supposed to do with this, like, ambiguity,
Be very scared.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the most realistic thing is like, either these could be true and they're all bad.
None of them are good.
None of them are good, yeah.
You want to say that knowing you're going to die by 50 is good.
Right. So, I mean, I think, though, the other option is to go with the one that is the most real to you based on your knowledge, whether or not it's correct. And like I was saying before, like, to me, in order to believe in the Ramban's Kareis, for example, I have to like posit a bunch of stuff and then also just shrug my shoulders a lot. With the Rambam, I still also shrug my shoulders, but just not as much,
Yeah.
So like, I feel like it's not wrong to just say I'm going to believe in whichever one rings true to me based on my current level of knowledge of how the soul works.
Right.
Yeah.
Which at that point, I mean, yeah, how the soul works.
Yeah.
It works.
I mean, it works enough to learn. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and then like after you die, like it's either not your problem anymore.
Yeah. Too late then. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Fire and brimstone.
Yeah. Yeah. If you get there and like the Shekhinah is like really, really dark, you're like, what's going on? Like, like these, I didn't pay for these seats. And you'd be like, oh, you did. Yeah. Yeah. All righty. That was a fun exploration.
Yeah.